travel to the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. We've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone. I am Ravenna Grim, and this is Behind the Button Eye. Nick of Time, Season 2, Episode 7, or Episode 43, originally aired on November 18th, 1960. We see our two protagonists, Dawn and Pat Carter, in their car while it's getting towed. The mechanic tells them that it's going to take a while for the car to be fixed and that it could take up to 4 hours. Pat comments on the absurdity of it taking that long, but Dawn suggests that they should just go out and get some lunch while they wait. Don wonders if he should call the office again. He's potentially up for a promotion and has been feeling antsy about hearing back, partially because he doesn't think that'll get it. Pat doesn't really like his self-doubt. They both go into a diner and they go to the jukebox to put on some music. They dance a little, but then decide to sit at a booth to have lunch. Don is pretty instantly intrigued by a fortune teller machine called the Mystic Seer. Pat says that they should try it, so they pop in a penny and Dawn asks if anything exciting ever happens in this town. The machine pops out a card that says, "It is quite possible." The server comes over and asks for their order. They both give the ever so exciting lunch order of tomato and lettuce on whole wheat, but they also get iced coffee. As they wait, Dawn starts fiddling in his pocket, prompting Pat to ask what he's doing. He explains that he's getting some pennies out to ask the machine more questions. Dawn asks if he's going to be promoted, and the card says, "It has been decided in your favor." Pat lightheartedly says that Dawn's worries should be over now, but he still gets up to call the office and see if it's true. While he is making the call at the payphone, Pat picks up something that Dawn took out from his pocket when he was rummaging for pennies. It appears to be a keychain with a rabbit foot and a 4-leaf clover trinket. She sets it back down when he asks if she has another quarter and hands one to him. She asks if this call is necessary, but he doesn't really respond. He gets in contact with the office and asks the secretary if he got the promotion. Good news, he did. He gets off the phone and the couple embrace. Pat expresses that she's so proud of him, and he happily says that she's looking at the youngest office manager. Pat says that she told him so, and Dawn agrees, but that he did too, gesturing to the fortune teller machine. Pat brushes it off and says that she told him first, and that they should celebrate. They sit back at their table and the server brings out their food and drinks. As they start to eat, Dawn suggests that they ask the fortune teller machine something else. Pat jokingly says to ask him why he didn't warn us that the whole wheat bread was stale. Dawn asks if it'll really be 4 hours before they get out of there, but the card only says that they may never know. Dawn looks at Pat confused and asks, "What does that mean?" But she says, "Who knows?" and continues to eat her sandwich. Dawn says he does, referring to the machine. He puts another penny in the machine and asks if there's something that will keep them from knowing that something will happen to them. The card says, "If you move soon." Dawn scoffs a little, and again is confused on what that's supposed to mean. He goes to put another penny in, and Pat makes a comment that it seems that she'll have to be the frugal one in their family. Dawn asks if the machine means that they're not supposed to move, that they should stay there. The card says that makes a good deal of sense. Again, Dawn puts a penny in to try to ask how long they should stay there. He gets more specific and asks if they shouldn't leave until 2:30. The card says to try again. After putting yet another penny in the machine, Dawn asks if they should stay there till 3. This time, the card says, "There's no question about it." A bit of uncomfortable silence follows, and Pat tries to ease the situation by suggesting that they should look around town. But Dawn is too focused on what's just happened. He says that every answer the machine gave seems to fit. Pat thinks he's joking, but he goes to try to put another penny in, and she puts her hand on his arm to stop him. He continues anyways and asks if they don't stay there till 3, if something bad will happen to them. The card comes out and he tells Pat to read it. The card says, "Do you dare risk finding out?" Pat urges him that they should leave, but Dawn tries to buy more time by saying that he hasn't finished his sandwich yet, and asks if they should also get some ice cream. Some time passes, and we see Dawn eating ice cream. Pat asks him if they can go now, but he tries asking if she wants something cold to drink. More hastily this time, she pleads for them to go. Finally, Dawn relents, and they both pay for their meals and leave. The pair hold hands as they start to cross the street. Pat questions if he really wanted to stay in the diner, and he says no. To double-check, though, she asks if he's being honest with her. You can tell this machine has been getting to him. He wonders how it was so specific with its answers. He goes on to angrily recite some of the responses as an example when Pat doesn't believe him. Pat tries explaining that it's just a napkin holder in a little diner in Ridgeview, Ohio. Although Don says he knows that, he doesn't quit. He asks her about his promotion and what the card said about it being in his favor. Pat looks worried and taken aback, prompting Dawn to say that she should forget it and that he's just being stupid. Pat disagrees, though, saying he's not stupid, but he cuts her off and says to not say that he's superstitious. He seems rather ashamed of being superstitious, but she tries to comfort him and gives him a kiss. The pair continue walking again, but Dawn is obviously distracted and on guard, looking all around. Pat says that it's worrying, and Dawn apologizes and expresses that he's not trying to upset her, just that the machine said 6 correct answers. Pat starts to get upset at this. They go to cross the street, but Pat seems hesitant, saying they should wait since there's a truck that's coming. Dawn says that they can make it, and they make a dash for it, but there's another car that they didn't see next to the truck. It's a close call, but they do make it across. Both are pretty freaked out, especially Pat. They embrace, and Dawn looks at a nearby clock to see that it's 3 p.m. exactly. In the next scene, they're sitting on a bench, and Pat is still distressed. She expresses that if he didn't pull her out of the way, she would have been one squashed honeymooner. They get up and start walking again, prompting Pat to ask where they're going to now. But she notices that they're heading to the diner, and stops, saying they're not going back there. Pat admits that it was a strange coincidence, and Dawn says that if she thought it was only just a coincidence, then she shouldn't be worried about going back into the diner. Pat denies being worried. As they both walk into the diner, they spot 2 women sitting in the booth with a mystic seer. They both sit down at the counter instead, but Dawn is fixated on the booth. Pat questions Dawn, almost pleading with him for reassurance that he doesn't believe the machine can foretell the future. However, Dawn says that it foretold their future. He explains how the car almost hit them when it was 3 p.m. exactly, and how that's what the machine said. Pat disagrees and says that it was Dawn who said 3, not the machine. She tries reasoning with him that he was the one that came up with all the details, and the machine only gave back generalities. He doesn't understand why Pat is so upset, and she explains that it's him that is upsetting her. Dawn notices the women starting to leave, so he gets some pennies from the server before heading over to the booth. He puts his hand under the chin of the devil head, asking if he knew about the car almost hitting them. The card, almost mockingly so, says, "What do you think?" He then asks if they will reach New York all right, and the card says that their chances are good. Pat sarcastically comments on how precise that answer was. Pat tries reasoning with him again, saying that anyone can get the same kind of answers from any one of the machines that they have in here. But Dawn disagrees. He says that they may be the same kind of answers, but not the same answers. He puts another penny in and asks if it'll still take 4 hours before their car is ready. Then the card comes out. Dawn smiles and happily tries showing the card to Pat. It says that it's already been taken care of. Suddenly, the car repairman comes into the diner and tells them that their car is ready. The couple looks at one another in shock. Dawn thanks him and says that they'll be right over. Once the repairman leaves, Dawn asks if Pat still thinks it's a coincidence, and she says that it is. This prompts Dawn to suggest that she should ask the machine some questions of her own then. She obliges and asks the machine if they will reach Columbus by tomorrow. Dawn is confused and says that they're not going through Columbus. Pat is attempting to prove her point by trying to trick the machine. However, the card says, if that's what you really want. Pat then asks if she will ever be married, which the card states that the answer to that is obvious. Pat starts to get a little frustrated. She asks if it's not possible to foretell the future, but the card says that it's up to her to find out. That seems to push her to the edge because she angrily says, "You're just a stupid piece of junk, aren't you?" The card simply says that it all depends on one's point of view. Pat tells Dawn that she doesn't want to stay there anymore, but Dawn is confused, asking even if the machine is actually foretelling the future. She says especially so if that's the case. Again, Dawn accuses Pat of being afraid of the machine, but she disagrees. She starts to leave, but stops when she hears that he put another penny in and asks if they're always going to live in St. Louis. We don't know what the card says, but Dawn continues asking where they're going to live. Pat comes back to the booth looking more and more concerned as Dawn continues asking questions of where they could potentially live. She finally gets his attention and says they should go, but he disagrees. He refuses to hear her out and says that she needs to listen to him, that the machine is predicting their future, and how could she even think that he could just walk away from that? Pat says that she's worried that he's letting the machine run his life. She starts listing off examples of how it made him call the office before and how it made him stay at the diner longer. She exclaims that it's as though every superstitious feeling he's ever had is wrapped up in that one machine. Finally, she pleads to him that it doesn't matter whether it can foretell the future, but what matters is that he believes in it more than himself, that he can decide his own life, that they can have a wonderful life together if they make it wonderful themselves. The pair embrace and Pat starts to cry a bit. He tells her not to cry and that they'll go. They'll go get their car and they'll drive out of this town and go wherever they want to, anytime they want to. They express their love for each other and kiss before they make their way out of the diner. As they leave, another couple walks in looking distressed and goes towards the booth. They sit down and the man puts a penny in and asks if they can ask some more questions now. They breathe a sigh of relief as they read the card. He asks if they can leave Ridgeview today, but as they look at the card, the woman sighs sadly. The man asks if there is any way out. We see him look at the card as a not-so-great-looking expression graces his face. We cut back to the original couple, who are in their car, driving away, having escaped the Twilight Zone. Richard L. Baer is the director of the episode. Originally from California, he was a director, producer, and screenwriter for primarily movies and TV shows. He directed a total of 7 Twilight Zone episodes, including Nick of Time. The other episodes he directed were To Serve Man, What's in the Box, The Fugitive, The Prime Mover, Third from the Sun, and The Purple Testament. Besides The Twilight Zone, he is pretty well known for his involvement with the CBS television show Green Acres that premiered from the 1960s to the 1970s. He directed around 166 episodes, which was the majority of the episodes. He passed away in 2015 at 101 years old. Richard Matheson is the writer of the episode. Originally from New Jersey, he was an author and screenwriter, especially in regard to the genres of horror, fantasy, and science fiction. He is probably best known for being the author of I Am Legend. He wrote around 16 episodes for The Twilight Zone, some including Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, Little Girl Lost, Death Ship, The Invaders, Night Call, Third from the Sun, and The Obsolete Man. Overall, he's considered a major creative influence for horror and science fiction alike. He passed away in 2013 at 87. The most well-known actor in this episode is, without a doubt, William Shatner, who plays the protagonist Dawn. Primarily known for being an actor, he's also been a producer, director, and author. His career has spanned across 7 decades. Besides his most memorable role of Captain Kirk in the Star Trek franchise, when it comes to The Twilight Zone, he is definitely more known for his role in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. However, Nick of Time is actually his first appearance in The Twilight Zone. He is currently 94 at the time of this video. Patricia Breslin plays the other protagonist in the episode, Pat Carter. Originally from New York, she was an actress and philanthropist. Besides this Twilight Zone episode, she also appeared in No Time Like the Past. Richard Matheson really liked her portrayal as Pat in this episode, and actually wanted her to co-star with William Shatner again in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet as the protagonist's wife. She had reoccurring roles in The People's Choice and Peyton Place. As a philanthropist, she donated millions of dollars to various art, educational, and health organizations. She passed away in 2011 at 85. Guy Wilkerson plays the server or counterman in this episode. Originally from Texas, he was best known for his roles in westerns. He played Panhandle Perkins in 22 films of the Rangers film series from 1942 to around 1945. He passed away in 1971 at 71. Stafford Rep plays the car mechanic. Originally from California, he initially acted in stage productions before World War II. Besides this Twilight Zone episode, he also appears in The Grave and Caesar and Me. He's probably most well known for his role as Police Chief Miles Clancy O'Hara on the ABC's Batman television series. He passed away in 1974 at 56. Walter Reed plays the man we see at the end of the episode. Originally from Washington, he acted across stage, film, and television alike, before changing careers to a real estate investor and broker in the late 1960s. One interesting fact I found about him was that he appeared in the first Superman theatrical feature film in 1951, Superman and the Mole Men. He passed away in 2001 at 85. Dee Carroll plays the woman we see at the end of the episode. Originally from Colorado, she appeared in various films and TV shows. She is probably most well known for her role as housekeeper Adele Hamilton on Days of Our Lives and had around 82 appearances. She passed away in 1980 at 54. Lastly is Robert McCord, who is the uncredited diner patron in this episode. Originally from Iowa, he appeared in around 32 episodes of The Twilight Zone. Almost every episode he does appear in is uncredited. Some of the exceptions include his role as Burke in The New Exhibit, the stagecoach driver in Mr. Denton on Doomsday, and his last Twilight Zone appearance as a townsman in Mr. Garrity in The Graves. He passed away in 1980 at 65. Our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. Fear of the future can also be thought of as anticipatory anxiety, which is, quote, a form of anxiety related to fear or dread of a future event, situation, or setting, end quote. It's a pretty common form of anxiety that many people experience, at least at some point in their life. This fear and anxiety can crumble one's confidence and resilience, similar to how we see Dawn's confidence and resilience shaken over the course of the episode. We're shown that Dawn already had some level of tendencies for being anxious. Pretty early on, he asked Pat if he should call the office again to see if there is any update on whether he's gotten the promotion or not. He doesn't really have that much confidence in himself that he is going to get the promotion, even when Pat attempts to reassure him otherwise. It's understandable for him to have some level of anxiety or nervousness, especially since he really does want this promotion. It has a degree of importance to him. We can see that his thoughts are quite fixated on this. It doesn't take him long to ask the Mystic Seer if he's going to get the promotion. When the fortune teller machine says that it's in his favor, he becomes excited, and pretty instantly goes to phone the office to see if it's true. Once he confirms that he did indeed get the promotion, he completely attributes it to the machine. His thirst for knowing more keeps increasing, but in turn, so does his anxiety and fear. In a lot of ways, it's a fear of the unknown, and a fear of not being in control, or at least feeling like he's not in control. Don feels like he's not really in control of his future, his fate, or his destiny. He truly believes that the Mystic Seer knows his future, so why wouldn't he ask it every question imaginable? It gives him a false sense of security, a feeling of power and control, even though he's actually giving that over to the machine. Pat points out to him he's practically letting the machine make decisions for his life. Who's to say that if they never asked the fortune teller machine any questions, that the events at 3 p.m. with almost getting hit by a car would have even happened? Neither the characters or us as the audience definitively know for sure exactly how this machine and its supposed future-telling ways operate. We don't know if the future is predestined and unchangeable, or if it's subject to change. What we do know from the episode, though, is with the couple that is introduced to us at the end. They're visibly haggard, and it's implied that they have been stuck in this town for a long time. They're practically shackled to the Mystic Seer, leaving any and all choices up for it to decide. What it says goes. The closing narration puts it perfectly. Two people permanently enslaved by the tyranny of fear and superstition, facing the future with a kind of helpless dread. For most of the episode, Don is more than willing to give up his control and freedom, if that means a gain in supposed knowledge or certainty. But all he really is gaining is more fear and dread. Superstition, a belief or practice resulting from ignorance, fear of the unknown, trust in magic or chance, or a false conception of causation. Even people who believe in superstitions usually on some level know that they aren't real. Besides the cultural element of superstitions existing across the globe, but also how they're passed through generations, they also have the potential for relieving anxiety. Superstitions can give somebody a sense of control, especially over outside factors. Think of it this way. Dawn carries around a rabbit's foot and four-leaf clover for good luck. In theory, by having these good luck charms on hand, it could make Dawn feel like it gives him more control of his life, because by having them, he can feel like it's increasing his good fortune. The main type of anxiety superstitions have the potential to relieve is with the unknown. With Dawn, he doesn't know if he's going to get the promotion. He also has a level of insecurity and an overall lack of confidence in his ability to be promoted. Since superstitions can give Dawn a false sense of control, it can give him a sense of confidence as well. If anything, he traded his smaller superstitions for a bigger one. The good luck charms could only provide such a level of anxiety relief. But with the fortune teller machine, it not only gave a positive answer when he asked if he got the promotion, but that it was substantiated when he called the office and it aligned with the machine's answer. The false sense of control would feel a lot more immense for Dawn compared to the good luck charms. Unfortunately, with every answer that lines up, it causes Dawn to become more and more anxious, even if he doesn't exactly realize it at the time. For most of the episode, he thinks he's gaining knowledge, gaining insight, and is unaware of what he is losing. What a man knows not, he too use requires, and what he knows, he cannot use for good. The title of this episode serves many purposes. For one, it's basically a pun for the couple's last-minute escape at the end of the episode. Richard Matheson, the writer of this episode, also considered the title to be representative of how time nicks into everyone as we live our lives. The other purpose of the episode title that is also very fitting is that Old Nick can be a name for the devil. All in all, the level of detail into the title, while still being simplistic, is just something that is really easy to appreciate. The little fortune teller machine, the mystic seer, that for only a penny you can ask any yes or no question. Even with the devil head on top, it's still so innocuous in a way. Hell, it's even a napkin holder. It's just harmless enough to draw one in. It only cost a penny, right? A deal with the devil is a pretty old but still intriguing trope found in storytelling throughout time. To make sure we're on the same page, though, quote, a deal with the devil in storytelling refers to a plot device where a character is tempted, often with power, knowledge, or survival, to bargain with the devil or a devil-like figure. The character typically surrenders their moral integrity or soul as a trade-off, leading to dramatic consequences, end quote. The most well-known example of this is most likely Faust. The deal or exchange reveals the person's ambitions and desires, but I think what is even more revealing is how it can showcase one's fears and insecurities. On some level, Dawn fears feeling out of control, and part of that also means fearing the unknown. No wonder things such as the future or other outside factors like whether he gets a promotion or not causes Dawn to feel fear and anxiety, all of which relate to the fears of the unknown and feeling out of control. Dawn only views the cost of receiving this knowledge and sense of control is a penny per question. He thinks by knowing all parts of his future, he will finally be in control, and thus won't have to be anxious or fearful. But that simply isn't the case. Like Pat could see, we as the audience also are able to. That Dawn is surrendering more than just his pocket change. For a sense of control, he is actually surrendering control. For a sense of knowledge, he is actually surrendering being able to think and choose his own decisions in life. For a sense of lessened anxiety and fear, he actually gets the opposite. His anxiety and fear control him, and therefore, the fortune teller machine, or at least devil-like figure, controls him too. Dawn, unlike many other Faust-like characters, is lucky though. Pat is able to convince him to leave. She's able to get through to him, to tell him that they don't have to know what's going to happen in their lives, but that they can make it happen. They can have a wonderful life together if they make it wonderful. A couple walk into a little diner and discover that just for 1 penny, they can glance into their future, but realize the cost is more than they originally bargained for. The pair walk off together and drive away from the hidden darkness of superstition and fear, while another couple is imprisoned by it. For how long? Well, that's up to them, but it might be too late before they realize that. That is, if they ever do. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Please give a like or comment if you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more videos like this, it would be amazing if you'd subscribe to this channel. Let me know your thoughts about this Twilight Zone episode, and if there's any other episodes you would like me to cover. Thank you for venturing with me into the world of horror. Farewell, and safe departures, my little ghouls.